I'm going to start by introducing some of the players, just quickly showing you a list of the players. And then we're going to get into the propaganda. Then we go to the Purge. We move into the Patriots. And we end with a weird twist. All right. So, appreciate you guys coming. And let's get into this. So, this is a list of the players. Just to run through this a little bit, we've got Donald Trump. You got Donald Trump Jr. Got some lawmakers: Rick Perry, Mike Lee, Chip Roy, Gohmert, Gosar, Meadows, Lindsey Graham, and this Rep Dan Mauser. You have Raga. Then we move into Rudy, Powell. Oh, that should be two L's. Powell, Phil Waldron, Russ Ramsland, Mike Flynn, the OAN, the network, Bernie Carrick, Epstein, Fox, Alex Jones, Stuart Rhodes, who's the founder and leader of the Oath Keepers, Roger Stone, Ali Alexander, Enrique Tarrio, who's the head of the Proud Boys, Daryl Stevens with the Three Percenters, Nick Fuentes. Then we get into some of the protest people: Amy Kremer, Kylie Kremer, Christina Pearson, I spelled that wrong, Brandon Straka, Charlie Kirk. We get into some of the DOJ: Bill Barr, Chris Miller, Kash Patel, General Tata, Ezra Cohen Wadnick. I got the little thing in the wrong place. Leave it like that. You got Mike Pompeo. Then you got some military people: Ivan Raiklan, Seth Keshel. You got Bannon should have been up with some other people. Howard, not going to do it. Lynn Wood, Jenna Ellis, and there's a few more that I'm pretty sure I missed. But those are just the players involved so far in the 10 days after the election. These are all the people that we already have proof that they were directly involved in a scheme to cast doubt on the election and then steal it. All of these people, I counted, I think it was 45 already in week 2. It ends up well over 300 people involved. That's why it's so hard for people to understand, because there are actually so many working parts that when you say January 6th, the people that dismiss it think of the attack on the Capitol like it was no big deal. Even to pretend that an attack on the Capitol is no big deal, but it wasn't a one-day event. It was orchestrated, and they worked really hard to not only orchestrate the attack in January 6th, but all kinds of ways they conspired together to try to steal the election. As mentioned last week, Stop the Steal did not begin in 2020. Roger Stone actually started Stop the Steal way back in 2016. So he already had this he revived it a little bit in 2018, but they had this whole plan and process already together. Now, the interesting thing is, this is dated the 7th of November. You can see here there was an orchestrated effort where it wasn't grassroots and these things sprung up. Look at how coordinated these events are, and look who's involved. In Arizona, at the state capitol, you've got Paul Gosar and Charlie Kirk. That's on November 7th. You have this guy and Scott Presler. That's on the 6th and the 7th. Then over here in Georgia, you have players that are going to be really big: Kylie Kremer, her daughter Amy Kremer, CJ Pearson, and Bostic. Bostic doesn't have that big of a role that I found, but here you see another event. Nevada, Holland and Kadri at the Capitol. Look how coordinated. They're all at the same time. They actually had a protest on November 7th in all 50 states. It wasn't grassroots. It was AstroTurf and funded. So you see, they already started the campaign. Why would you have a protest in all 50 states if Trump won certain states? What are you protesting? What are you looking to accomplish? By November 4th, they're already putting out these stop the steal coordinated messages. There's no way you can even pretend that this isn't a coordinated attack when by the 4th, before the election was called, they were already putting this stuff out. You see Gozar and far right social media personality Michael Cernovich, including several protests carry firearms outside Maricopa. The Republican lawmakers were directly involved with a lot of these. But here you got November 5th, stop the count. This is where you see these protests. More than 200 protesters, including militias, gathered in Detroit. They're protesting in every state. Brandon Straka, he'll come up throughout all of this. He supposedly was a Democrat and started the walk away campaign to try to say people are walking away from the Democrat Party as part of their propaganda for the election. So we keep going. We get to November 7th. Look at that. Nick Fuentes, America First Groyper. Look at that. He's already promoting the Million MAGA March that will be on the 14th. So not only did they organize a protest in all 50 states, but here you see on the same day, that night, they're already talking about the next weekend's protest in D.C. Here you've got Amy and Kylie Kremer of the organization Women for America First, rebrand a Facebook group from Boot Pelosi to March for Trump. You can see they did that here on the 8th down here. Oh, I can't highlight it. But you'll see where it says group history. And then here's like the invite to coming to this event at noon. So now we've got the far right wing. We have the militias. We have the protest planners. We have Congress people and personalities throughout the entire country already by November 7th synergistically working together. This is what people aren't understanding, is that they already were working on this from day one. So here we get down here, promotional material for the Million MAGA March circulating amongst extremist communities online and begin to appear on militia movement recruiting forum boards and chat rooms. Oath Keepers leader Stuart Rose streams live video from a Stop the Steal rally in Virginia. That I think was on the 7th. No, maybe not. At the time of the publication, the Oath Keepers channel remained accessible on YouTube. So they were literally doing this stuff out in the open. Jones's outlet InfoWars promotes the Stop the Steal cause and organizes a multi-state caravan to Washington, D.C. How about that? You want to check it out? Let's check it out.
Folks, we are taking action against this steal of the re-election of 45 President Donald J. Trump. Take action with us. Follow Stop the Steal Caravan on Parler, at Stop the Steal Caravan. This is a map, and on this map you're going to see little roadways. Oh, see, beautiful. Okay, so we are launching the Stop the Steal Caravan, and it is going to be launching from Austin, Texas, right here tonight at 5 p.m. And what we're going to do is we're going to drive right down here into Houston, where we're going to have our first stop tonight at 8 p.m. Then we got a long drive ahead of us, and we're going to go all the way here through Louisiana. We may make a stop maybe in Lafayette or something, link up with some people, through Mississippi, all the way through here down to Florida into Tallahassee. This is where we will be on Tuesday evening. Then on Wednesday, we're going to head north like this, right up through here, link up in Atlanta with some friends. That'll be on Wednesday. And then Thursday, We're going to head up to North Carolina.
Look at that.
Hit Charlotte. Head into Virginia. Stop somewhere in Virginia, maybe Richmond, haven't decided yet, and then shoot into D.C. on Friday. So this is the Stop the Steal Caravan. Alex Jones is really excited about this. He knows it's going to go perfectly to plan, and that's why he's so excited about this.
And let's expand on that, because this is a short video. Tell people about the Parler account where they find all this information.
Stop the Steal Caravan on Parler. It's the only place that's not going to ban us right now, and I'll be doing constant updates. Stop the Steal Caravan on Parler. So
All right, more coming there at Infowars.com. Owen Schroyer leads the attack.
Unbelievable.
Peaceful attack.
We already begin to see that by the 6th, even, you have the White House, lawmakers, you have media, the protest planners, and the militia, Alex Jones, all of these people already synergistically working together. They're already one cohesive unit. Because remember last week, on the 4th, Trump sent Rudy over to take over the campaign. So this was all very, very coordinated. When we look, it says, after Trump's defeat, his supporters held a heavily armed pity party. Proud Boys, white nationalists, QAnon believers, QAnon believers, armed militia, and other Trump fans gathered in Pennsylvania, the state that made Joe Biden the president-elect. After news networks declared President Donald Trump the loser of the 2020 election on Saturday, about 2,000 of his supporters gathered here in the capital of Pennsylvania. They didn't randomly go there. You saw that. It was a planned protest. They were going there to protest whether this race was called or not. This was the same day that Giuliani was in Four Seasons Landscaping. I actually think that looks like Ethan Nordine, but I don't really know for sure. A ghoulish and cruel coalition of gun-toting MAGA extremists who enjoyed 4 years of being emboldened and condoned by the president gathered for hours to participate in the shared delusion that their guy hadn't really lost the White House. They arrived around noon, immediately attempting to disrupt a permanent protest organized by pro-democracy progressives. I mean, you already see it. They don't care. They've got their guns. They got their stuff. They're coming. Now look at that. They chanted on November 7th, "Stop the Steal." Part of a coordinated campaign. What does that say? I don't even know what that one is. Police eventually told MAGA crowd that it needed to move on. Once assembled there, Representative Dan Mauser, a Trump fan widely believed to be eyeing a run for governor, took hold of a megaphone and spoke to the crowd. See? You've got legislators at events with militia working together. He was surrounded by fascists. To his left, a man waved a flag for the anti-Semitic white nationalist movement known as America First with Nick Fuentes. Imagine that. To his right, a man clad in black held a sign that read, "Standing back and standing by for our president," which we know is a quote from the president when he called out to the Proud Boys instead of condemning them. This was one of the invitations. You can see this is Women for America First, who, spoiler or foreshadow, they happen to be the ones that threw the event on the ellipse. So you can see they're already, before the 14th, organizing stuff on the 7th with in conjunction with Ali Alexander on the far right, and they coordinated this effort. So you've got militia people doing a road trip to get there on the 14th. You have Fuentes, Trump, and all these other people promoting it for the 14th. And it's impossible to not see the connection if you actually look. This right here should scare the hell out of you. This was on November 10th. To show you how directly coordinated the violent side of this was, This is Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers, who's also been indicted on seditious conspiracy, is on InfoWars with Alex Jones. So far, Alex Jones has had Roger Stone on talking about Stop the Steal. Alex Jones went to Arizona on the 6th. Then they had protests on the 7th. And now, or that on the 9th, no, earlier on the 10th, you heard him talk about the caravan. And here's some chilling stuff.
Stuart Rhodes, you were coming on about the rallies and the caravan and the event Saturday that's important, but how big is it to have Brennan firing the bat signal saying we're in deep trouble? He put a new SecDef in. Oh my God. Pompeo says, hey, Trump will be the next president. They're fraudulent. They've been gaslighting us. I mean, this is an insane time to be alive, Stuart Rhodes, because obviously they're trying to get everybody right now to turn over to the globalists. They're putting incredible pressure on people. You know, Pompeo's had pressure put on him. He's a survivor. And so to have Pompeo still siding with Trump and being very confident is a big sign. What do you have to say? Stuart Rhodes, founder of Oath Keepers, Army veteran, former lawyer, you name it.
Well, I think he's on the verge of doing what I've been calling on President Trump to do for at least 6 months, which is declassify all the dirty secrets and throw them out in the street. That's why it's awesome to see Don Jr. saying that just the other day. He posted on Twitter, declassify everything.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have agreed. You've been beating the drum for months. Weaponize this even before the election. Declassify it, destroy Brennan as a foreign agent, destroy Hunter, destroy Biden now. And Trump knows it's his only move, and that's why they're now calling for a coup to remove Trump, because he's finally moving towards victory. Continue.
Rule of thumb, everything they say is projection. So if they're calling for a coup, pretty good idea that they're doing a coup.
That's how you know he's over the target. He has to do it. I think he needs to do that right now. He has full authority as commander-in-chief and the president. No one can stop him. Brennan realizes that. That's why they're panicking.
And in the words of Emperor Palpatine, do it. He needs to do it, doesn't he?
That was weird.
He does. And that's why I think it's great. I think he's heard the message. That's why Don Jr. posted on Twitter, declassify everything. We can't let the bad actors get away with it.
Wait. So you have the militia member, the head of the head of the Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes here, talking to Alex Jones, right? Who's quoting Donald Trump Jr.
I mean, I got to say, Stuart, I don't overhype things. I watched the body language of Brennan. He is shitting bricks right now.
Good. And what he needs to do is he needs to have SOCOM. He's got a good SOCOM man now in charge of Secretary of Defense, but he needs to put SOCOM in charge of going and taking control and securing all the facilities where all the data is. And he cannot even trust the DNI. He cannot trust the normal military intelligence services. He must go to the SOCOM. He must put his warriors front and center and have them secure the data and have the SOCOM intelligence officers process it and follow his orders, because otherwise they will drag their feet on declassification.
And I agree, and he needs to do it now. He needs to resolute desk, announce it, declare total war, and the enemy will turn and run in fear.
Exactly. And the next thing he needs to do after that is he needs to do a WikiLeaks, Snowden style and Julian Assange style data dump.
Because here's the deal. If it was an American deep state overthrowing Trump, I'd still fight it. It's a Chi-Com, New World Order, Great Reset, Global Depression, attack our families, castrate our sons program. We must oppose this, Stuart.
Yes, that is what the Democrats
Because here's the
are.
deal. If it was an American
Democrats
deep
are doing
state
this.
overthrowing Trump, I'd still fight it. It's a Chi-Com, New World Order, Great Reset, Global Depression, attack our families, castrate our sons program. We must oppose this, Stuart.
Well, President Trump has a very narrow window to stand up and do the right thing by defeating the deep state, by draining the swamp as he promised to do. Because if he does not do that, if he fails to do this, and he allows himself to be removed illegitimately, or he's talked into it, we're now hearing that Kushner is in his ear.
Oh, they're always going to come after him. None of their deals are going to fit. So how does Trump nuke how does he nuke the deep state?
He does the mass declassification. Of course, he doesn't declassify anything that put Americans, patriotic Americans at risk
we
overseas.
can't have that.
Well, that's the problem. There's so many crimes, but it's a targeted release. Start with Hillary, start with Obama, start with all of it, just destroy them.
Well, no, I would say both left and
that was
right.
bad.
You've got deep state controlled judges. I would consider Roberts one of them. You've got deep state controlled puppets all through the media through academia, through politics, through the
So
law.
justice be done, may the heavens fall.
Exactly
I
right.
almost
You know, like I
spilled
said,
the
don't
whole
put
Frisbee.
lives at
I don't
risk
know if you can
overseas,
see
guys
the
that are in
Frisbee.
theater.
No,
But here at
probably
home domestically,
Wow.
no shelter for them.
like a
Let's be
For all the
clear.
dirty
Obama
money.
already 6 years ago gave the Personnel Office of Management hack to the Chi-Coms. So this has already been done to our enemies, a full data dump. How about give the world the truth?
Right. You do the data dump and you put it out there for the American people to see, and then we'll all know exactly who
This
the
is
pedophiles
just
are. Who all the
So
bottom
isn't
tables
he? Isn't the threat of this his real kill switch? Why do you think Pompeo looks so confident but almost psychotic, and then Brennan looks like he's dying?
Well, I mean, here's the problem. Using this as a negotiation tool to make them back off and not continue to steal the election is not enough. He needs to defeat them by.
No, I
by
agree.
going
He needs
ahead-
to fire the frickin' Death Star.
Exactly right. Go ahead and just do it.
I love.
And when he does,
I love how they keep referring to like things as the Death Star, like without the irony that the Death Star was blowed up. Like the Death Star was blowed apart by like a swamp rat shooting kid. And yet they're always talking about they want to be the Death Star. First of all, the Death Star's the bad guys. Like you're directly aligned with the bad guys.
does that, all their house of cards will fall. They will all fall. We will all see who they are. And you'll
It's
have
like dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
What?
That's right. And then he needs to invoke the Insurrection Act and use the military. And I, you know, in the past, have been opposed to using the
No,
military to.
he just said he needs to use the Insurrection Act. Well, we actually have Flynn talk about that like a month later, we know.
Domestically for this purpose, he needs to use the military, like I said, to
Because
seize the-
we were worried about globalists using the military against us, which is going to happen. This is globalist overthrowing our government. We better have the military stop the globalists.
Oh wait, I gotta wait.
Well, have them at least do this. Have them go and secure the data and secure the facilities and suppress the deep state who are inside.
No,
the
you're right.
military.
They're so scared this former special operations commander has been hired for just this mission.
They're talking
I
about
think they're
Stuart
listening to you,
Rhodes,
Stuart. I think
former
I think
special
this
ops
is
guy.
happening.
Well, I think it's not just myself in saying this, but I think it definitely didn't hurt. So, but I'm glad to see it happening, and we're there to support it. So what we're doing is we have men already stationed outside D.C. as a nuclear option in case they attempt to remove the president illegally. We will step in and stop
Heard
it.
that?
And we're going to be there to also help secure the.
I think they're listening to you, Stuart. I think this is happening.
This is huge.
Well, I think it's not just myself in saying this, but I think it definitely didn't hurt. So, but I'm glad to see it happening, and we're there to support it. So what we're doing is we have men already stationed outside D.C. as a nuclear option in case they attempt to remove the president illegally. We will step in and stop it. And we're going to be there to also help secure the coming rally this Saturday and your caravan coming in. So I've got good men on the
hear
ground
that?
already. We've been lead recon there.
We are going to be doing security at the rally on the 14th for when your caravan comes in. So you don't just randomly do security without talking to the person you're going to guard. So we now know for certain that he's admitted being willing to use violence. He's admitted that he's working with Alex Jones.
There last week, and we're sorting out what we're going to be staging, and we'll be there. We'll be inside D.C. We'll also be on the outside of D.C. armed, prepared to go in if the president calls
Stuart,
us up.
can you not feel history happening right now? I mean, it's happening right now.
It is, and we all need to realize that we're Americans. We're born in this country at this time for this purpose. We need to let go of the fear, you know?
The fear of what?
I don't
Of
have
attacking
fear.
the
I have
Capitol?
concern about what is the right thing to do. My God, there's just like, there's so many options.
Projection. There are so many options. We could attack the Capitol. We could get these fake electors. We could just call martial law.
Here.
Well, I know I'm preaching to the choir on that, right? So you and I are like that. But there's so many Americans out there that they've been timid in the past and afraid. You got to let go of your fears. Look, just as Americans from across the country stormed up to Bundy Ranch to stand up for a rancher's family.
That was considered domestic terrorism, by the way. The stuff at Bundy Ranch was considered domestic terrorism. So in his mind, being a patriot is committing acts of domestic terrorism.
To go to Washington, D.C. with the same conviction.
I was about to
stand up-
say, this is a commie Chi-Com takeover with an admitted Chinese agent. You better get your ass to D.C., folks, this Saturday.
Yeah, if you don't, there'll be no more republic. But we're not going to let that happen. It's not even an if. it's either President Trump is encouraged and bolstered and strengthened to do what he must do, or we wind up in a bloody fight. We all know that the fight's coming, but he has a chance to fix this very quickly by defanging the snake.
I agree. Let me ask you this. We'll do a final segment here, then Paul Watson takes over. Why would Biden announce the economy will be more shut down? Why are they just want to break them? I mean, they give us no quarter. They give us no quarter.
Well, they're arrogant, and so that's okay. Use that to wake up your fellow Americans. Here, look, the secrets that the deep state holds on people, all the pedophile stings, all the sex prostitution stings, all of this is how they control everybody. That is the swamp water, the swamp.
You know, all
creatures
those
swimming
Madison
is the
Cawthorn
dirty
orgy
secrets.
parties.
Oh, it's like when they planted child porn on my office. We never opened it. They said, oh,
Like when they planted child porn on the computer in my office, says the guy that lied about Sandy Hook and got caught. Sure, they put it on your computer.
it's time to meet with us and roll over. I said, war. I attacked them. They burned to hell. Exactly.
Right.
It's
They burned to hell.
all made up crap. Stuart Rhodes, more comments from you. Ann Owen Schroyer on the road.
Phenomenal.
Headed to Tallahassee. I'm going to tell folks in
Phenomenal.
Florida, everybody listening in the country, call your family in Florida. Get in your truck, get in your van, get in your vehicle. Meet us at 8:30 at the damn Capitol.
Unbelievable. All right, so you see, they're all in cahoots. They're very syncopated. That's not the right word. They're synchronized. After consensus majority news organizations declared Biden the president-elect on November 7th, Trump refused to accept his loss, declaring this election is far from over and alleging election fraud without providing evidence. Now, he was already claiming fraud before the election, and nothing changed. He said it was going to be fraudulent. He said he wasn't going to accept the results. And if he didn't win, it was fraud, and he'd fight it. And that's what he did. He indicated that he would continue legal challenges in key states, but most of them were dismissed by the courts. His legal team, led by Giuliani, made numerous false and unsubstantiated assertions revolving around an international communist conspiracy, rigged voting machines, and polling place fraud to claim that the election had been stolen from Trump. Trump blocked government officials from cooperating in the presidential transition. Now remember, Trump refused to let there be a peaceful transition of power, not just on January 6th, but every day up until January 6th. He fired people that if they talked about it working with Biden, he wouldn't let any of the health people talk COVID with him. He stopped him getting the presidential briefing that he had been getting during the campaign. He did everything he could. It's important to put all this together. None of these are individual events. They are all part of one big event. And if we don't pay attention to how this all fits together, this country's over. You cannot allow half of a government to be openly corrupt without accountability. It's been proven time and time again that when you let a conglomerate of powerful people be corrupt, it will get worse. It's not going to get better. Trump blocked government officials from cooperating. Attorney General William Barr authorized the Justice Department to initiate investigations if there are clear and apparent credible allegations of irregularities that, if true, could potentially impact the outcome of federal elections in an individual state. That line is actually important later because somebody quits over being instructed to do an investigation that doesn't even meet that criteria. And that criteria doesn't meet precedent. So he's violating precedent and then goes even deeper. In the months between the election and Inauguration Day, Trump engaged in multiple efforts to overturn the results. He filed numerous lawsuits, urged local and state authorities to overturn the results in their jurisdiction, pressed the Justice Department to verify unsupported claims of election fraud, and worked with congressional allies to get the results overturned in Congress on January 6th. Stop the Steal is a far-right and conservative campaign. Far-right and conservative campaign and protest movement in the United States promoting conspiracy theory that falsely posits that widespread electoral fraud occurred during the 2020 presidential election to deny incumbent President Donald Trump victory over former Vice President Joe Biden. Trump and his supporters have asserted, without evidence, that he is the winner. So no, I'm not leaving the White House. No, I belong here. No, it's my White House. They cheated. A New York Times survey of state election officials found no evidence of significant voting fraud, nor did the Justice Department, and dozens of lawsuits filed by Trump and his proxies to challenge voting results in several states failed. Stop the Steal was created. We already know that. Nope. Stop the Steal groups were founded by right-wing extremists after Trump published tweets encouraging his supporters to stop the count. Many unorganized Stop the Steal groups protested in various U.S. cities. Blah, 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 blah. Several of these protests include members of extremist groups such as the Three Percenters, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, which CNN reported was an illustration of the thinning of the line between mainstream right and far right. After vote counts showed a Biden victory, Trump engaged in what has been called post-election purge. Told you we're going to get to the purge. Firing or forcing out at least a dozen officials and replacing them with loyalists. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper was fired by tweet on the 9th. Undersecretary of Defense Joseph Kernan and acting Undersecretary James Anderson resigned in protest or were forced out. The White House sought to learn the names of political appointees who had applauded Anderson upon his departure so they could be fired. The DoD Chief of Staff Jen Stewart was replaced by former staffer to Representative Devin Nunes, the guy that quit to go work with Trump. Bonnie Glick, the Deputy Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, was abruptly fired on the 6th. She had prepared a transition manual for the next administration. She was due to become acting administrator for the department on the 7th. So because she started to do anything that said Trump lost, they fired you. Firing her left the position of acting administrator vacant so that Trump loyals John Barsa could become acting deputy. How was this designed to do anything but destroy the U.S.? That's all this was to destroy the U.S. On November 13th, while the recount was ongoing, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina privately called Georgia's Secretary of State to discuss Georgia's vote counting. That's weird. What would he be doing? Why would you be calling the Secretary of State? What does that election have to do with you? You criminal, you slimy little weasel. Graham asked whether Roethlisberger could disqualify all mail-in ballots in counties that had more signature errors. A Republican election official and staffer was present for the call, and Sterling confirmed that Graham had asked that question. Raffensperger viewed Graham's question as a suggestion to throw out legally cast ballots, although Graham denied suggesting that. Graham acknowledged calling Raffensperger to find out how to protect the integrity of mail-in voting. Projection. How do we get rid of the mail-in votes? And how does signature verification work? What does it matter? It's not your state. I thought you were a states' rights guy. Why are you, the federal government, interfering in a state election? Why is the federal government overreaching and going into states. How is that okay, guy? Graham stated that he was investigating in his own capacity as a senator, although he's the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Graham also claimed that he had spoken to secretaries of state in Arizona and Nevada. The secretaries, however, denied this, and Graham then contradicted himself, stating that he had talked to the governor of Arizona, but no official in Nevada. So he lied, and then he lied, and then he lied again. That's just what Republicans do. In the 76 post-election lawsuits, pro-Trump plaintiffs succeeded only twice. They filed 76 lawsuits and lost 74. And yet people say there is fraud. They lost 74 out of 76. Neither successful complaint advanced any allegations of fraud, and both rendered relatively minor victories. On November 3, Election Day, and the days immediately following, plaintiffs concentrated on Pennsylvania. 5 of 7 lawsuits filed on November 3rd, they filed 7 lawsuits on Election Day, were filed in Pennsylvania courts. Now, remember, that night, so on the 3rd, they filed the suits. On AM on the 4th, Trump claimed victory and claimed that the other side, the Democrats, are the ones that are going to file a bunch of lawsuits. Well, he already filed them that day. Within the first week following Election Day, 18 of 29 election lawsuits were filed in Pennsylvania. All of the Pennsylvania cases concern technical aspects of ballot counting and completion. On November 7, a slew of new lawsuits were filed in states that Trump had won in 2016, but which flipped to Biden. So on the 7th, while they were organizing those protests all around the country, and the election was being called, Trump was filing more lawsuits that he lost. Beginning on November 9, cases shifted focus to try to prevent state governments from certifying election results before their statutory prescribed end-of-month deadlines. Those cases included these ones. About the same time, a jurisprudential shift emerged. Early cases relied on garden variety, disparate treatment, equal protection allegations. Following the Supreme Court, plaintiffs in 2020 sought to revitalize Bush v. Gore, holding with an updated hook. Plaintiffs asked a court to rule that if some counties in Pennsylvania were contacting voters to offer them an opportunity to correct defects with their mail-in ballots, but other counties were not, then the same Bush v. Gore equal protection. Starting on November 11th, plaintiff imported a novel 14th Amendment argument used during the summer's pre-election litigation, which usurped the mantle to become a dominant and conspicuous trend in post-election litigation. So you can see they were doing protests, they were attacking in the courts, they were attacking in the media, they were spreading false claims of fraud. And the reality is, you need to realize everything that we've talked about so far was in the public domain at the time. So none of this so far is information that we've gotten after the fact. All of this is information that was known and available and was being done out in the open. If they had worked harder to hide it, it would feel more nefarious. But because Trump can ask China to help him rig our elections and have Ukraine rig our elections and ask Russia for help in the election, and that isn't a problem for anybody, they get away with this. These people that were all coordinated also had a major media platform to help them. let's check into some of the shenanigans that was going on with this crew.
President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani. And Rudy, it is wonderful to have you this weekend. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Maria.
So I know that you've been working all weekend on this. The first question everybody wants to know is, what is the evidence the president has alluded to in terms of ballot fraud? What can you tell us?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of evidence. Let me see if I can summarize it by state.
Now,
Some of it.
Let's remember, there's no evidence. Everything he's saying is a lie. There is no evidence. Everything they claimed was proven a lie. Whether it was Georgia, PA, Michigan, Arizona, Wisconsin, Georgia, all a lie. Everything they said that you're going to see from these medias was a lie.
Developed, ready to go into a lawsuit tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday. In Philadelphia, we're the furthest ahead. We have about 60 or 70 witnesses in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, and in Pittsburgh.
Now, they never brought any of these witnesses to a real court. None of them.
Pittsburgh, we have observers who were for 24 hours kept out of the room or kept away from the room where they were counting the mail-in ballots, which of course are the highly suspicious ballots.
Why?
During that period of time, at least 135,000 ballots were counted, none of which were observed by any Republican observer, as the law requires.
What a ridiculous claim by a lawyer. Obviously, there's fraud because we didn't see the ballots. We know there's fraud because we didn't see anything. Nobody was able to look, so we know there's fraud. It has to be. How could there be any other possible explanation? It has to be fraud.
And as is really necessary, given the fact that these ballots came in late, they were being brought in by bundles.
Lie.
It looked very much like they were trying to make up the 700,000 difference that they had
now he's claiming 700,000 fake ballots were made between the 4th and the 7th.
Election night. Then you go all the way across the strait to Pittsburgh, and we have exactly the same situation happening. Republican observers being kept so far away that they had to try to use binoculars to see the ballots. They couldn't accomplish that.
Oh, that means there's fraud.
They count about 300,000 ballots that went through that process. And even though we went to court,
How do you know?
and we were allowed to move.
How do you know how many ballots went by if you couldn't see them? No, that's a silly loophole. That's like saying you know how many people got across the border that you didn't see. You guys are really good at this. You're not good at fixing anything, but you're really good at like Superman X-ray vision.
6 feet closer, the Democrat machine people moved the counting place 6 feet further away. This is documented on videotape. There are upwards of 50 witnesses, and this will be the subject of a lawsuit that we file tomorrow for violating civil rights, for conducting an unfair election, for violating the law of the state, for treating Pittsburgh and Philadelphia different than the rest of the state, which is an equal protection violation, which goes under Bush v. Gore.
Well, we just read that.
I mean, this is something that just has to be
too.
addressed. There are at least, and it's going to go up, Maria, I know it, because we haven't even analyzed Lackawanna County yet. So we're at now 450,000 definite mail-in ballots that they separated from the envelope, threw the envelope away. We can never tell if they're valid or not. They could all have been done by one person, and we didn't get a chance to observe. It is required that both sides observe. And why wouldn't they let us observe? You have to be stupid not to figure out why. Because for 3 days they were laboring mightily.
They didn't let us observe because for 3 days they were filling out ballots to make up the difference.
To make up the 700,000 vote deficit they had in a city that is an epicenter of voter fraud. Over the last 60 years, there have been so many cases of voter fraud in.
I mean, this they're just repeating the same thing. This is what he said at the press conference. He says here,
Philadelphia.
he's saying everywhere else.
Joe Frazier voted in the
Frazier.
2018
Yeah,
election
Will
5 years
Smith's
after he
dad
was dead.
voted.
Will Smith's grandfather voted twice after he died. So then we're going to be looking at dead persons' ballots, which may actually be very, very substantial. And then another one that might be just as challenging, except we need a little more time. There was a lot of backdating.
Okay, so just to be clear, there was backdating, there was dead people, there were people filling out ballots, and there were the people weren't allowed in. You got to be kidding me! You got to be kidding me! Happy Easter to you as well.
Dating of votes that came in after the deadline, and we have evidence now from not only the post office but from others that there was backdating. I can only tell you right now that amounts to about 2,000 or 3,000 votes, but that could be much, much bigger.
What a clown.
Then we have dead people voting. We haven't analyzed that yet.
Right.
And then we have people who say they didn't vote, or they did vote and their vote hasn't been registered. You put that all together, we're up to about 900,000 votes that were completely invalid. And we only had 3 days of investigation.
So we haven't had time to investigate it, but we know everything. We know all the scams that we're going to not prove. We know them all of them. We know them all. You got a scam? We got that scam. You need a scam, homie? Homie, you need a scam? We got that scam. Okay, this one's going to be painful. I'm going to speed it up a little bit, but like, this one hurts. This is a level of propaganda that, like, when you watch it, realizing that this is November 9th. This is the same day that interview I think we just saw. They're already starting all of these lies. They've already had the protests. You already have the militia working together with everybody. And then we already know that Fox was talking directly to the White House. They were in direct communication with Trump, Mark Meadows, and the White House. And so you have to look at this broadcast from the standpoint of, we know there was no fraud, but watch all the propaganda techniques that he uses here.
Tucker Carlson tonight, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. In case you haven't noticed, it's hard to trust anything you hear right now.
There you go.
We're grateful that you trust us, and we will try to be worthy of your trust. We want to begin tonight by assessing some of the things no doubt you have heard about last week's presidential election. There are conflicting versions of virtually every part of that story. But as of right now, here's what we think we know. For much of election night, Donald Trump seemed to be leading in a number of key swing states. Then early Wednesday morning, he began to fall behind. That trend continued more or less for several days. On Saturday, the media declared Joe Biden the president-elect. Biden quickly accepted that judgment. The Biden campaign now has something called the Office of the President-elect.
Biden quickly accepted that. Like, he did something wrong. Like, he was like, oh, I won. Okay, thanks. Don't stop counting. You can see how he frames every little thing as a problem. Joe Biden was announced the winner. He accepted. The problem is not conceding. The problem isn't accepting. Trump didn't concede. That's the problem. So what do they have to do? They've got to make Biden the problem. Every single thing that comes out of this chuck wagon's mouth is projection and misdirection.
Official, which of course is the point of setting it up. And in the end, it's possible it will be official. If after all
it will be.
The questions have been answered, it becomes clear that Joe Biden is the legitimate winner of the presidential election. We will accept that, and we'll encourage others to accept it too.
But don't accept it yet.
We're Americans first. We want what is best for this country. We want our system of government to continue.
Do you? Projection, meaning we don't want it to continue.
It does continue, though, depends in part on how we proceed from here. As of tonight, tens of millions of Americans suspect that this election was stolen from them.
With no proof.
We now live in a country where a large percentage of our population no longer believes that our democracy is real.
Because you're sitting here for 20 minutes telling them they can't believe in democracy.
That is sad. It is also dangerous. It could easily get worse. What we're doing in response is hardly the solution. It is making our country much more volatile. It is setting us up for something bad. In a democracy, you cannot ignore honest questions from citizens. You're not allowed. You can't
Yes, you
dismiss them out of
can.
hand.
Yes, what does that mean? You're not allowed to ignore honest questions. How about honest questions like, can we stop systemic inequality? Can we please handle student debt? How about, can we stop making my health a profit motive? How about we get rid of for-profit prisons and focus on reducing recidivism? How about we focus on preventing crime instead of punishing crime? Yeah, but those are questions we're not allowed to answer. What if somebody wonders if they're gay? Are we allowed to answer if somebody wonders if they're gay? Do we have to force officials everywhere to answer a legitimate question of, is it okay to be gay? It's just moronic.
No longer believes that our democracy is real. That is sad. It is also dangerous. It could easily get worse.
It
What we're
does.
doing in response is hardly the solution. It is making our country much more volatile. It is setting us up for something bad.
Saying you can't make up fraudulent claims about the election without proof and expect people to believe you is the real problem. We should be able to say whatever we want and tell you to investigate it. And if you won't investigate it, it's proof that there's a problem. Just like when we can't see the ballots, it's proof of fraud.
In a democracy, you cannot ignore honest questions from citizens. You're not allowed. You can't dismiss them out of hand as crazy or immoral for asking.
you can.
You can't just cut away from coverage you don't like. You
Yes,
can't simply
you can.
tell people to accept an outcome because force doesn't work in a democracy. That's
But that's what you're asking us to do. You're forcing the winners to accept your BS. We're not trying to force you to accept the election. We just want you to abide by the rules. But that's not good enough for you, you privileged Swanson heir. What you need to do is you need to rig the system, because to you, to the privileged, any form of equality feels like oppression to somebody like Swanson here.
dictatorship. In a free society, you have to convince the public of your legitimacy. You have to win them over with reason.
No, you don't.
Democracy is always
Yeah,
voluntary.
well, okay, fine. You're claiming fraud, which means you have to win us over with your legitimacy. But you don't see it that way. You see it, you get to claim fraud, and we have to prove it wasn't, which is exactly what Giuliani said in the landscaping conference. It's not our job to prove a ballot is fake. It's their job to prove a ballot is real. Tucker Carlson, could you prove to me that Bigfoot isn't real? No, you can't prove negatives like that, and it's not your job to prove that Bigfoot isn't real. It would be my job to find the little furry
arrangement. Telling voters to shut up is never enough. So in this case, tonight, there's only one way to lower the national temperature and unite the country. We need to find out exactly what happened in this election.
The only way we can all, from the 81 million that voted for Biden, the only way they can feel okay is if we appease the 40% of Republicans. So 60% of Republicans and all the Democrats believe the election happened, but everybody owes it to the privileged Swansons here to put everything that we've always done aside to appease their claims.